Diana Spencer entered the world without imagining that one day she would be watched, imitated, and dissected by millions. England called her a princess. The world called her a myth. But fashion recognized her as something far deeper. A force that broke protocols without breaking her essence, an aesthetic that changed from silence, a gesture that transformed every gaze into a symbol. Before her, royalty dressed as if carrying the weight of centuries on their shoulders. Rigid, perfect, timeless. With her came an unexpected truth. Elegance could breathe too. The princess abandoned the cold image of the palace to embrace humanity. Risk, the kind of style that speaks from the skin. She didn't need crowns to shine. Bare shoulders, clean lines, pearls that seemed to beat with her, and dresses that spoke what her voice, silenced so many times, could not pronounce were enough. Her style was born timid, almost forced. But with every wound, every media blow, every public betrayal, her image rose stronger. Fashion followed her like armor and like confession. The revenge dress, the outfit that changed the perception of feminine power, the sporty looks that redefined casual luxury, the evening gowns that resembled sad poems. Everything in her was message. Everything in her was revolution. Diana didn't dress to please. She dressed to survive. And in that process, she changed the history of world fashion forever. Fashion did not approach Diana with timidity. It surrounded her like a silent current the very moment she appeared before the world. It was as if the air changed density when she entered the frame, as if the light recognized a presence capable of altering its own language. No one understood it at first, but something profound was about to shift. The tradition that had remained intact for centuries was beginning to crack. In her early appearances, Diana did not wear spectacular garments. She wore softness. She wore a different way of occupying space. The pastel fabrics seemed to move before she did, anticipating her arrival. The puffed sleeves captured flashes of light that protocol didn't know how to handle. The fluid skirts glided as if freeing royalty from its historical rigidity. That wasn't fashion. It was a new language. The public froze before that contrast. In a time dominated by the visual excess of the 80s, where every silhouette wanted to shout, Diana appeared like a whisper that carried more force than any noise. Her aesthetic did not impose. It hypnotized. And it did so with a restrained energy that seemed suspended between innocence and an unexpected modernity. That tension created the soft royal style, an aesthetic current that displaced opulence and turned delicacy into a symbol of power. Designers noticed it before anyone else. Catherine Walker saw in her a living canvas. Bruce Oldfield understood that he wasn't designing for a princess, but for a woman whose presence transformed shape into emotion. The Emmanuel duo realized that the lightest fabrics would be the only ones capable of accompanying the silent gravity of her figure. Dressing her wasn't adorning her. It was translating her magnetism. Even photographers changed the way they looked at her. The light stopped being frontal and became enveloping, as if it wanted to protect her. The framing softened. The shadows grew cleaner. Images of Diana didn't look like photographs. They looked like held breaths. Her impact spread with unusual speed. Pastel colors, once relegated to youthful romanticism, became an absolute trend. Lightweight fabrics returned to European runways. The sailor collar reappeared as a symbol of youthful refinement. Luxury houses began designing not from exuberance, but from purity, and all because one single figure had managed to redirect the aesthetic desire of an entire generation. The most surprising thing was her intuition. Diana didn't study fashion. She felt it. She knew, almost instinctively, which tones made the camera vibrate. She knew how a minimal gesture could turn a simple garment into a visual statement. She knew that the movement of the body held more power than any jewel. Fashion became her most precise form of communication. Every color she chose was a message. Every texture was a state. Every line was a decision. This is how she redefined modern aristocracy. She showed that a royal figure could be current without losing grandeur. That closeness did not cancel elegance. That tradition could coexist with contemporary sensitivity. Her influence was so deep that decades later, the aesthetics of Kate Middleton, Meghan Markle, and an entire new generation of public women still draw from her formula. Classicism refined by gentle modernity. The pact between Diana and fashion was silent, but irreversible. Fashion chose her because she had something no designer could manufacture, a natural way of turning light into style and style into emotion. That is how her revolution began. Not with an iconic dress, not with a scandal, but with a presence that changed the visual temperature of an era. From that moment on, fashion understood that delicacy is not the absence of strength. It is its most sophisticated form. Diana's transformation into an icon did not happen on its own. It happened when certain creators saw in her something fashion had lost long ago. A face capable of turning sensitivity into trend. It wasn't a collaboration like the calculated, strategic ones that fill headlines today. It was an instinctive recognition, almost spiritual. The industry understood that Diana would not be a client. She would be a language. The first spark arrived with David and Elizabeth Emanuel. They did not only design her wedding dress, they designed the doorway through which Diana would enter the mythology of fashion. When they looked at her, they saw light. They saw a kind of modernity wrapped in shyness that needed fabrics capable of amplifying each of her breaths. The Emanuels understood that the key was not to adorn her, but to accompany her. Their vision created an aesthetic that defined an era. Soft volume, controlled romanticism, subtle shimmer that did not seek to dazzle but to envelop. But the most powerful bond emerged with Catherine Walker. She understood Diana like no other designer, not as a princess, not as a celebrity, as a woman who was building a public identity through clothing. For Walker, dressing Diana was an act of emotional architecture. She had to create structures that supported her image without suffocating it. She had to refine the silhouette without stealing its naturalness. She had to grant power without losing delicacy. Walker created the line that would define Diana's first visual mythology. Column dresses that seemed to extend her toward the light, evening gowns that flowed like water, long coats that made her walk with the solemnity of a historical figure. With her, Diana became a shape, a proportion, an idea. Something similar happened with Bruce Oldfield. He saw in Diana the possibility of uniting British aristocracy with urban dynamism. His designs were sharper, more modern, more assured. Dressing Diana ceased to be an ornamental act and became a declaration of European sophistication. The structured shoulders, clean cuts, and fabrics that fell with almost mathematical precision consolidated her transition into a mature elegance. And then came Versace. With Gianni, Diana found a different mirror, not the mirror of the delicate princess, but of the woman who was beginning to command the narrative of her own image. Versace understood that she could shine in a territory where royalty rarely dared to step. Modern sensuality. The Italian dresses shaped her body with an explosive mix of softness and strength. It was another Diana, a Diana evolving in public and expanding the limits of what a royal figure could represent in fashion. The extraordinary thing was that each designer, without intending to, added a layer to the Diana iconography. The Emanuels built the initial myth, Walker perfected it, Oldfield sharpened it, Versace liberated it. But the true revolution was that her style did not depend on them. She absorbed every proposal and turned it into a language of her own. She did not imitate. She interpreted. And in interpreting, she transformed. Photographers began to follow this evolution with almost scientific precision. Every new design changed the way she was framed. Every color altered the atmosphere of her public appearances. Fashion moved around her as if she were a gravitational center. And she was. Brands knew that any aesthetic Diana embraced would inevitably become a global trend. But the deepest impact happened outside the atelier. It happened in the street. When Diana paired an immaculate blazer with simple jeans, she redefined the notion of casual elegance. When she wore a red sheep sweater, the world understood that royalty could also play with fashion. When she chose a minimalist black dress, the press turned it into a symbol of a new kind of freedom. The creators dressed her. But she was the one who created the phenomenon. Every designer who worked with Diana discovered they were not crafting garments for a body. They were crafting history. What was born in the atelier became an icon when it touched her skin. She transformed fabric into meaning. She transformed color into emotion. She transformed every appearance into a chapter of contemporary fashion. That is how the encounter between Diana and her creators became an alliance that redefined the aesthetic of an era. It was not a collaboration, it was a rebirth. The revolution that Diana introduced into fashion did not erupt with noise. It did not need aggressive flashes or dramatic gestures. Her revolution was silent, immaculate, almost ethereal. A force that advanced without raising its voice, yet profoundly altered the way the world understood elegance. While the 80s moved between excess, monumental shoulder pads, and metallic shine, she chose the opposite path. Softness. Delicacy became her most unexpected weapon. Every garment she touched seemed to undo the rigidity of protocol. Tulle became lighter. Satin took on the exact shape of her silhouette. Pastel colors stopped being innocent and began to be sophisticated. Fashion, accustomed to dictating rules from a distance, found in Diana a human pulse that transformed it. Suddenly, the world began to crave that quiet elegance she embodied effortlessly. It was a style that did not try to dominate. It tried to communicate. The impact was felt quickly. At a time when power was expressed through hard lines, Diana introduced an aesthetic where strength lived in a gentle gesture. It was an irresistible paradox. Designers tried to explain it, but what she did had no theory. It had presence. The slow fall of her skirts, the romantic collars, the cream tones that seemed to illuminate her skin created a new visual grammar. The industry was not dressing her, it was learning from her. The revolution was visible in every appearance. Instead of imposing herself through ostentation, Diana imposed herself through aesthetic honesty. Elegance stopped being inaccessible. It became breathable. The structured looks of royal protocol began to fade, and in their place emerged a style permeated with humanity. It was not a rejection of tradition. It was a reinvention. When Diana began wearing garments that softened her figure, the world understood that a princess could be delicate without losing dignity. What once seemed obligatory, rigid fabrics, severe colors, began to look outdated. Global fashion leaned toward clean cuts, fluid lines, and more serene palettes. Magazines replicated her aesthetic with fervor. Teenagers imitated her outfits. Fashion houses softened the harshness of their collections to align with the taste she had set in motion. Her impact was not only visual, it was philosophical. Diana changed the question that defined fashion. Before, how to demonstrate power. After her, how to express truth. Her sartorial choices conveyed a form of strength that did not need to shout. Delicacy as stance, elegance as sincerity, softness as a symbol of independence. One of the deepest effects of this revolution was the transformation of the role of royalty in the contemporary imagination. Diana removed the aura of coldness that had covered the House of Windsor for generations. not through attitude, through aesthetics. Her visual presence invited closeness, not distant admiration. That, in fashion, was a political actor, without uttering a single word. The industry understood this immediately. Brands began creating collections that anticipated that feeling. Designers spoke of a new elegant realism. Editorial campaigns borrowed Diana's color palette, her soft textures, her balance between restraint and warmth. Haute couture found inspiration in her naturalness. Prêt-à-porter found a perfect aspirational model, noble without ostentation. But the most powerful symbol of this revolution was how she transformed the concept of modern femininity. In an era when many wanted to dress women as urban warriors, Diana showed that the delicate could also be insurgent. That softness was not weakness, but intention. That charm could be more subversive than any extravagance. This is why her influence spread like an endless echo. Because what she brought was not a passing style, it was a paradigm shift. From that moment on, fashion would be more human, more emotional, more sensitive to light, to details, to what is not said. Diana did not impose an aesthetic. She invited the world to see her differently. And that invitation, accepted by millions, became a global revolution. Delicacy is also power. The moment when Diana's aesthetic ceased to be just style and became myth had a date, a stage, and a symbol: her wedding dress. That garment was not simply a design, it was a cultural act, a turning point where visual purity transformed into global iconography. The world did not see a bride, it saw the birth of an archetype. When the carriage advanced and the dress appeared, silence became collective. No image had carried such impact in decades. The exaggerated volumes, the ivory silk, the antique lace, the endless pleats, and the monumental train created a vision that surpassed tradition and romanticism. It was an explosive mix of fairy tale and cinematography, a living painting that made millions feel that purity had found a new form. What was extraordinary was that this purity was not naive, it was deliberate. David and Elizabeth Emanuel understood that the dress needed to capture more than elegance. It had to capture the hope of an era. It had to become a cultural symbol capable of outlasting the marriage itself. And that is exactly what happened. No one remembers that day without remembering the image of the dress. No one remembers the dress without remembering the sensation of luminosity that Diana radiated. From that moment on, fashion understood that visual purity could be monumental. The traditional idea of the British bride was rewritten in a single instant. Magazines redesigned their standards. Fashion houses reinterpreted romanticism. The aesthetic of the 80s, until then dominated by urban excess and aggressive forms, made room for the rebirth of a soft, theatrical romanticism that imitated Diana's volumes. But the myth did not remain confined to the wedding dress. That was only the first act. Every time Diana appeared at an official event, purity took on new forms. It could be a white gown with pearls that shone like tiny prayers. It could be a sky blue ensemble that felt like an extension of the air. It could be a smooth evening dress that reflected light, as if she were standing inside a piece of glass. It was not the clothing that created the myth. It was the atmosphere that arose around her. Purity in Diana was not fragility. It was presence. A way of walking that turned elegance into something almost sacred. The camera followed her as if her image were a prayer. The international press began to speak of her as an aesthetic phenomenon, not a princess, an icon of light, a figure who seemed designed for fabrics to reveal their best secrets. That effect reached its peak when she began using jewelry narratively. She did not accumulate shine. She directed it. The pearl necklace, the deep sapphire, the discreet diamonds were not adornments. They were signs. Fragments of light that created a mystical iconography around her image. brands understood that purity could have intensity, that a white could be more powerful than a red, that a quiet gesture could command more attention than a flashy garment. Diana created a type of purity that did not belong to the past. It was pure, yet modern, soft, yet firm, luminous, yet never empty. Fashion clung to that dichotomy and turned it into a global trend. Every bridal collection of the years that followed, every romantic editorial, every minimalist campaign carried the imprint of the woman who transformed the idea of the white dress into a cultural symbol. The most fascinating part is that this purity turned into myth survived even when her style became bolder. It did not disappear. It evolved. It distilled itself. It remained as the invisible essence that gave coherence to all her transformations. Even the famous revenge dress, charged with fire and freedom, carried in its structure a pure line, a verticality that reminded the world that beauty, for Diana, always began from light. That is why her aesthetic legacy remains intact, because her purity was not fashion, was a moment of visual faith, a collective experience, an image the world refused to forget. Purity became myth because, in Diana, light found its perfect form. After purity became myth, Diana entered a stage in which elegance stopped being a quality and transformed into a ritual. It was not simply dressing well. It was an almost liturgical act. Every outfit, every fabric, every piece of jewelry seemed to obey a silent choreography she mastered with absolute precision. Elegance became her personal temple, her way of asserting presence, of setting boundaries, of communicating without the need to utter a single word. In this phase, Diana developed an aesthetic control that few public figures have ever reached. She no longer reacted to fashion. She directed it. Pastel tones gave way to deeper, more polished, more confident colors. The initial romanticism transformed into a conscious sophistication, almost architectural. The dresses lengthened, the lines refined, the fabrics gained weight. From luminous princess, she became the absolute reference of mature elegance. The garments she wore no longer enveloped her. They defined her. Blazers and suits became one of her most powerful symbols. Clean cuts, soft lapels, discreetly structured shoulders created an impeccable figure that combined authority and serenity. It was a difficult balance to achieve. No woman in the public sphere managed power, dressing with such delicacy. While the corporate feminist world embraced oversized shoulders and aggressive silhouettes, Diana showed another path. Authority could be soft. Power could be elegant. Strength could be silent. The effect was immediate. The female suit changed forever. The industry began softening its lines. Pastel colors returned to professional spaces thanks to her. The blazer became an aspirational symbol not only of style, but of autonomy. Every appearance Diana made was studied as if it were an aesthetic ceremony. And in a way, it was. Wherever she stood, fashion behaved as if it were standing before an altar. Jewelry also adopted a ceremonial role. Diana did not accumulate shine. She selected meaning, the tight pearl collar that circled her neck like a declaration of formal purity, the deep blue sapphire that became an iconic piece transcending generations, the discreet diamonds that seemed to pulse with her skin. The way she combined these pieces did not follow the rules of luxury. It followed the rules of intention. Everything she touched acquired an aura. Haute couture began to draw inspiration from her. The minimalism of the early 90s, which would later dominate Europe, found in Diana its unexpected muse. Smooth dresses, free of excessive embellishment, with clean falls and solid colors, began appearing on runways. Luxury no longer needed to shout. It only needed to present itself with the serenity she carried so naturally. Then came the most surprising phenomenon. Elegance stopped being an aesthetic and became a visual ethic. It did not matter whether she wore a gala gown or a simple suit. Her presence turned every look into a moral statement, a way of giving thanks, of honoring, of respecting the moment. Fashion, in her, wasn't vanity. It was gratitude, a way of acknowledging the solemnity of each context without abandoning modernity. There lay the magic. Diana did not dress to impress or to conquer. She dressed to give thanks, to offer a visual version of her respect for the people and places she visited. That act, so simple and so profound, redefined the relationship between fashion and humanity. Public figures began to understand that dressing was not merely an aesthetic act, but an act of spiritual communication. This stage left images that today are lessons in elegance. The midnight blue dress with which she danced with John Travolta, the series of white gowns that looked like moving sculptures, the monochromatic suits that transformed simplicity into power, the red dresses that revealed a different kind of bravery. Each of these moments was studied, replicated, reinterpreted by designers around the world. Diana had elevated fashion. It was not clothing, it was not luxury, it was a sacred language. That is why her legacy in this stage is so solid. She taught that elegance does not depend on what one wears, but on how one inhabits it. That true sophistication lies not in adornment, but in intention. And that some women turn fashion into something greater than style. They turn it into a form of soul. In this new phase, fashion stopped surrounding Diana and began to build itself upon her. Her body, slender, agile, naturally vertical, became an architectural blueprint that designers studied with geometric precision. Every movement she made revealed a truth that would forever change the relationship between the female silhouette and contemporary fashion. The body should not adapt to the garment. The garment should adapt to the body. Diana introduced a new way of understanding proportion. Her elegance no longer depended on ornament, but on structure. Straight cuts, continuous lines, fabrics that followed the verticality of her figure created an aesthetic that seemed to sketch her in the air. Where the 80s had been ruled by monumental shoulder pads and exaggerated volume, she offered an almost architectural balance: stability, purity, precision. Designers understood it immediately. Catherine Walker refined column dresses so they would glide like an extension of the torso. Versace polished the lines to accentuate the long, fluid silhouette she projected. Even her daytime outfits began to exhibit a geometric harmony that turned every appearance into a study in proportion and visual rhythm. But the true revolution emerged when Diana carried that architecture into the realm of the everyday. Her casual looks, so discussed and so imitated, introduced a completely new aesthetic: the athletic body as a symbol of modern elegance. No member of royalty had ever appeared in leggings, oversized sweatshirts, white sneakers, and structured jackets that maintained the verticality of her figure. It was an unexpected blend of aristocracy and urban dynamism. The result was an immediate cultural impact. The moment Diana appeared in black biker shorts and a university sweatshirt, the world understood that sportswear could be sophisticated. That look, captured by paparazzi, became a visual manifesto that redefined women's streetwear in the 90s. For the first time, elegance was not incompatible with comfort. The architecture of the body could be free, flexible, emotional. Editorials adapted quickly. Magazines began presenting more agile silhouettes, more natural ones, more aligned with human movement. Sportswear brands entered the realm of luxury without asking permission. Runways incorporated garments, inspired by the real dynamism Diana had legitimized. The line between formal and casual clothing blurred, opening the door to an era in which women could move without renouncing style. Even in her most formal looks, the architecture remained present. Sleeveless dresses that revealed the shoulders, diagonal lines that emphasized movement, asymmetric necklines that played with the geometry of the torso, all responded to a mathematical logic, transformed into visual emotion. Diana understood that the silhouette could speak for itself, that a body well accompanied by the right garment could express more than any ornament. Her impact became so deep that it changed the way women related to their own bodies. It was no longer about hiding imperfections or imitating a rigid standard. It was about finding harmony, about wearing clothes that accompanied rather than imposed, about allowing the physical form to have soul. This aesthetic philosophy continues influencing designers today, who still use proportions that evoke her structural elegance. Diana did not simply dress, she designed with her body. She turned each garment into a dialogue between form and movement. And in that dialogue was born one of her most enduring contributions, the architecture of modern elegance. Because the body has its own language, and she knew how to give it soul. Diana's style did not freeze in myth. It evolved with time, and in that evolution, it revealed one of her deepest contributions to fashion: the ability to transform each garment into an act of memory. As her public life advanced, her relationship with clothing stopped being an aesthetic search and became an intimate dialogue with the passing of time. Fashion no longer merely accompanied her, it narrated her. In this stage, the colors became more serene. Whites acquired a different light, warmer, more mature. Blues ceased to be gentle tones and turned into deep, almost introspective reflections. Beiges, blacks, and neutral hues transformed into a visual language that conveyed balance. Diana seemed to be building a quieter elegance, more reflective, more aware of her own history. One of the most powerful symbols of this phase was her use of accessories that carried emotional weight. The Cartier tank watch, simple and geometric, became an extension of her relationship with time. It was not ostentation, it was memory. It was the idea that fashion could speak of continuity, of permanence, of moments that had to be kept close to the pulse. The same occurred with her inherited or reinterpreted jewelry, whose presence was never accidental. Each piece, each glimmer, seemed to hold a memory. Fashion then discovered a new concept thanks to her: tenderness as sophistication. While minimalism gained strength in Europe, Diana adopted it from a place more emotional than aesthetic. She did not seek the coldness of pure design. She sought serenity. She dressed like someone who gives thanks for the past, who honors what has been lived without needing to display it. Her smooth dresses, her monochromatic suits, her soft lines transmitted a mature relationship with elegance. The industry took note. Editorials began to explore a more contemplative aesthetic. Fashion houses introduced collections where minimalism was not synonymous with austerity, but with peace. Photographic campaigns adopted soft tones, clean compositions, and warm light that evoked the serenity Diana had brought into fashion. What she created was not a trend. It was emotional rhythm, a visual cadence that defined how elegance should feel in the 90s. More human, more intimate, more honest. Even her way of repeating outfits became a cultural statement. While traditional royalty avoided being seen with the same look more than once, Diana turned it into a modern gesture. Not out of austerity, but out of intention. Repeating an outfit was a way of reclaiming the emotional relationship with the garment. It was acknowledging that fashion is not disposable. It is lived. That idea directly influenced the elegant sustainability celebrated today. Without giving speeches, Diana planted the notion that true luxury is also memory. In this stage, she also experimented with reinterpretations of her own visual archive. A white dress, similar to those of her early years, appeared in a more refined version, A blue ensemble that once had been romantic returned transformed into sophisticated minimalism. It was as if she rewrote her aesthetic chapters from a maturity that conversed with her past. Every garment was a dialogue with herself. The public felt it. The Diana of this era generated immediate nostalgia. It was not sadness, it was tenderness, a sensation of witnessing a woman who did not run from time but embraced it. And that visual embrace redefined how international fashion understood the concept of aesthetic transition. Women no longer wanted to follow fast trends. They wanted to evolve as she did, with calm, with light, with truth. That is why this stage is so crucial in her legacy, because she showed that fashion is not only present, it is memory, it is gratitude. It is a way of honoring what has been lived while walking forward. True luxury is remembering with tenderness, and no figure embodied it better than Diana. In the history of fashion, few figures have achieved what Diana accomplished in this stage, turning compassion into aesthetics. As her public life moved toward a more humanitarian territory, her style changed as well. It did not become simpler. It became truer. Fashion stopped being an ornament and became a bridge between her and the world she wanted to heal. Her elegance was no longer expressed in galas, it was expressed in gestures. When Diana began walking among HIV patients, refugees, sick children, and marginalized communities, the international fashion world was stunned. How could a symbolic figure of aristocracy enter those spaces with such naturalness? The answer lay in her aesthetic. It was not clothing designed to impress. It was clothing designed to approach. White shirts, beige trousers, soft shoulders, light sweaters, and neutral tones became her humanitarian uniform. This style, which appeared simple, was in reality a deeply strategic choice. It communicated trust, empathy, warmth. No garment overshadowed the person in front of her. No color imposed hierarchy. It was an aesthetic that said, "I am here with you, not above you." Fashion took note. For the first time, neutrality became a trend. Earth tones dominated collections. White shirts became iconographic. The humanitarian chic style was born from her direct influence. What she wore on missions around the world was replicated on runways, in editorials, and advertising campaigns. Sensitivity became aspirational. Closeness became luxury. But the moment that sealed this stage was her visit to Angola. Dressed in a light blue shirt, beige pants, and a protective vest, she walked through a minefield with a serenity that seemed unrepeatable. That image traveled the planet, not as a political act, but as a visual monument to humanitarian courage. Fashion transformed her into an icon, not because she was glamorous, but because she elevated simplicity to a mythical level. That look defined a new dimension of elegance, the elegance of the act. Even in official events dedicated to social causes, Diana adopted a different aesthetic. She left behind shiny fabrics and opted for warm colors, unadorned dresses, clean lines that conveyed a kind of intimate solemnity. It was a new sophistication, where beauty did not compete with the message, but accompanied it. That balance was as complex as it was perfect. Her way of using accessories also changed. Pearls were still present, but worn with discretion. Sapphires and diamonds gave space to smaller, more personal, more human pieces. Even the small handbags she carried seemed to fulfill a symbolic role. Nothing ostentatious should stand between her and the person before her. The international fashion world understood this as a lesson. Luxury houses began exploring collections inspired by humanity, not only aesthetics. The concept of soft activism fashion emerged, where clothing had to participate in the social message. Diana had shown that fashion could be a vehicle of compassion without losing refinement. The impact extended to the concept of global celebrity. After Diana, it was no longer enough to be elegant. It was necessary to be meaningful, and the way she did it became methodology. Dressing to connect, not to dominate. Dressing to include, not to impress. Dressing so that attention moved to the cause, not to the figure. This was her greatest contribution in this stage. Elegance stopped being ornament and transformed into humanity. When the world saw Diana kneel before a sick child, embracing him tenderly while wearing a simple, light-toned outfit, it understood a truth that would change the relationship between fashion and humanitarian action. Compassion has its own aesthetic, an aesthetic that needs no shine, an aesthetic that does not seek cameras, an aesthetic born from inner light. That is why her style in this phase continues to be studied, because she proved that the most powerful beauty is not in the garment, but in what one does while wearing it. Fashion can be an act of love, and with Diana, it was. Time never passed over Diana like a shadow that subtracts. It passed like a light that reveals. As she moved into the final stage of her public life, her style began to refine with an almost poetic clarity. She no longer sought to impress or embody an ideal that wasn't her own. She sought truth. Her fashion became a mirror in which the world could see a woman in full transformation, accepting the passage of time with an elegance that asked for no permission. Intense colors gave way to a purer palette. White became a personal symbol, a space of air where she seemed to breathe more freely. Black acquired an elegant depth, not dramatic. Navy blue became a visual refuge. Lines grew cleaner, fabrics more disciplined. Her dresses left behind superfluous adornment and became essential forms, almost meditative. It was as if Diana had discovered that mature beauty does not need volume. It needs intention. The evening gowns she wore in this stage possessed a silent strength few could equal. Straight lines, asymmetrical necklines, stripped-down silhouettes revealed a conscious sophistication. There was no trace of youthful romanticism or ceremonial excess. What remained was an elegance that trusted itself, a serenity that required no justification. The international fashion world interpreted this shift as a clear sign. Maturity could be a trend. Luxury houses accelerated their transition toward an emotional minimalism, where form and light were protagonists. Diana's style became a reference for a new aesthetic era. Women began seeking looks that were purer, more restrained, more subtle. Fashion left behind the excess of the 80s and advanced toward the sophistication of the 90s. And in that movement, Diana's figure was a compass. But the most striking aspect was how she used simplicity as a declaration of identity. Her mature elegance did not compete with the world. It accompanied it. She no longer dressed like a princess. She dressed like a woman. It was the first time in decades that fashion witnessed this transition in real time. From youthful icon to adult figure, embracing every line on her face as part of her aesthetic story. The press was surprised by the serenity of her appearances. In photos captured without previous preparation, her style remained impeccable. A white shirt with straight jeans, a flawless blazer over a monochromatic set, a black dress with simple lines. There were no mistakes, no excess. There was clarity. Fashion understood that true luxury is coherence. In this stage, even her accessory choices reflected a different philosophy. She wore fewer pieces, but each carried visual weight. Pearl earrings became beacons of restraint. Fine bracelets marked only a whisper of shine. The absence of excess was, in itself, an act of power. Her mature style directly influenced women of her generation and those who followed. The global trend toward clean elegance was born largely from her final appearances. Minimalism stopped being an artistic proposal and became an emotional one. Women began to seek garments that narrated their growth, not garments that concealed their age. Because that was the beauty of Diana in the face of time. She did not fight against it. She conversed with it. Her final style seemed to say that maturity is not a surrender, but a conquest. That elegance does not disappear. It transforms. That light does not fade. It becomes more precise. And that aesthetic lesson remained engraved in the world's memory as one of the most refined chapters of contemporary fashion. Peace is the final form of beauty. There are figures who stop belonging to their own time and begin to belong to the memory of the world. When Diana left, her style did not disappear. It expanded. It became an echo that continued shaping fashion long after she stopped walking among cameras. Her elegance, far from being trapped in press archives, transformed into a universal language, a living myth that continues redefining what it means to dress with soul. The industry understood immediately that her legacy was not a collection of iconic dresses, but a way of understanding beauty. Diana had shown that fashion could be human, emotional, vulnerable, and still profoundly sophisticated. Her aesthetic essence became a matrix for a new generation of designers seeking to unite delicacy with modernity. Runways adopted her softness, her purity, her emotional minimalism, her clean colors, her balance between tradition and freshness. Dior, Versace, Chanel, Givenchy, even contemporary houses like Off-White and Alexander McQueen reinterpreted elements of her style. Whether in a soft sleeve, a column dress, a structured blazer, or the ivory palette that characterized her so deeply, Diana's imprint remained there, guiding from a distance. She had invented, without knowing it, an archetype. The modern woman who combines inner nobility with silent strength. Her influence also became an aesthetic guide for other public figures. Kate Middleton inherited her ceremonial purity. Meghan Markle absorbed her intelligent minimalism. First ladies, contemporary queens, red carpet celebrities, and even influencers find in Diana a visual map for how to dress with dignity, intention, and emotional pulse. Her style was not a passing trend. It was a method, a structure that continues working on every body, in every context, in every time. The myth grew even more through popular culture. Series, documentaries, editorials, and films replicated her aesthetic with devotion. Every reproduction of her image, the white shirt, the beige blazer, the midnight blue gown, the black revenge dress, did not seek nostalgia, but relevance. Because her style did not age, it evolved with the world. Fashion found in her life a rare balance: delicacy without weakness, glamour without excess, simplicity without anonymity. And that is what made her a myth. It was not the shine, it was the truth. Diana showed that an icon is not born from luxury, but from authenticity. That a garment matters not for its price, but for what it communicates. That elegance is a moral act, not an aesthetic one. Her death did not extinguish that light. It amplified it. Diana's aesthetic iconography became a mirror in which every generation sees itself reflected. In an era of visual saturation, her purity becomes a beacon. In a world of trends that change weekly, her coherence is anchor. In a time when fashion sometimes disconnects from emotion, her humanity becomes indispensable. That is what transforms her into myth, not her life, not her tragedy, her visual legacy, her ability to show that fashion can be an act of love toward oneself and toward others, that it can speak of strength without violence, that it can illuminate without wounding, that it can touch without imposing. Diana was not a trend, she was an idea that continues breathing in every woman who seeks beauty with truth, style with soul, elegance with compassion. Her myth endures because the world still needs what she represented, a light that does not go out, even when time tries to. When history closes a chapter, there is almost always a silence. But the silence that followed Diana was not empty. It was a murmur, a breath that remained suspended in the world, as if her light had decided to stay even after her departure. Fashion, which so often chases the present, did something unusual. It stopped. It looked back, and it understood that it had lost more than an icon. It had lost a compass. Because Diana did not leave behind a wardrobe. She left an echo. That echo lives in the way a white shirt can radiate serenity, in how a well-cut blazer can communicate respect, in the calm fall of a smooth dress that needs no adornment to become unforgettable, in the soft glow of a pearl that seems to contain all the fragility and strength of a life. Contemporary fashion continues to converse with that echo. It cites it, reinvents it, multiplies it. Every year, on every runway, one of her gestures appears. Sometimes it is a vertical silhouette that recalls her luminous presence. Sometimes it is a black dress that carries the same silent bravery of the revenge dress. Sometimes it is a beige ensemble that evokes the tenderness of her humanitarian stage. Sometimes it is a deep blue that breathes like her best gala nights. Diana remains there, like a whisper stitched into the seams of time. What is extraordinary is that her influence no longer belongs only to the aesthetic realm. It belongs to collective emotion. Diana taught that fashion could accompany life, not replace it. That it could be an honest mirror. That it could transform vulnerability into beauty. Her legacy is not measured in iconic looks, but in the way millions of women stand before a mirror and seek not perfection, but authenticity. That is the eternal echo, the idea that elegance is not born in the fabric, but in the soul. When her images are revisited today, one does not see a princess. One sees a woman who turned her stages into aesthetic chapters, her silences into symbols, her transformations into visual lessons. Each photograph is an invitation to look with more softness, to dress with more intention, to live with more light. Designers, aware of this, always return to her figure, not out of nostalgia, but for clarity. Because in a world where fashion changes so quickly that it sometimes loses meaning, Diana continues offering something no trend can replace: a vision. A way of understanding that delicacy can be revolution, that simplicity can be greatness, that humanity can be style. Her echo is also present in popular culture, in cinematic reinterpretations, in editorials that seek to capture her purity, in every generation that discovers her for the first time and is surprised by how contemporary her elegance still feels. Diana does not age because her aesthetic was never fashion. It was essence. And essences do not fade. They amplify. That is why when the world thinks of eternal elegance, it thinks of her. Not of a specific dress, nor a jewel, nor a hairstyle. It thinks of that luminous sensation she created when she appeared. Of that soft calm she transmitted even in the middle of chaos. Of that unique way of turning every moment into an image that seemed to breathe. Diana continues living in fashion because fashion continues needing her. It needs her light. It needs her truth. It needs her humanity. Because there are bodies that time erases, but there are souls that time amplifies. And hers, wrapped in delicacy, continues illuminating the world.